appreciate what it takes to keep our city running. And thank you for the time and care and preparing for this time. We say a special thank you to Kelly and Ann and Ellen, especially for putting the financial picture together. Your work provides realistic projections, clear understanding of resources required to fulfill the enormous responsibility of serving this community. So let's go.
Hello, my name is Hester. I'm Finance Director for the City of Coralville, and to start the budget, I will provide the overall big picture where we are with property tax revenues. Property tax revenues are calculated based on the information we get from the county auditor, and overall property tax value increased by 4.76% up to 1.6 billion compared to last year increase of 3.67%. So increase was higher. However, under the new property tax legislation, a 2% limitation factor was applied, and the 2% limitation factor is for buildings and 4% and 5.99%, and that reduced the property tax dollars by $252,000. As a result, total new property tax dollars for fiscal year 27 are $352,000. For comparison, since last year growth was less, last year growth was 3.67%, limitation factor last year was 1% instead of 2%. Salaries. Increase in budgeted wages due to step-up increases and cost of living adjustments for general fund. That number is over $800,000, and that by itself creates a deficit of $530,000. So that's the difference between the wage increases and the new property tax dollars. We'll also continue to experience increases in just various prices for services and equipment. And currently the budget gap, because we do need to have a balanced budget, is $439,000, and this is what we need to address. Future considerations. The replacement tax that has been in effect for a few years will be phased out, and the last payment that we expect to receive will be in fiscal year 29, and those payments have been decreasing each year. Also, transit levy and federal funding. Our transit system is being funded by transit levy and federal funding, and after the COVID, we've received some COVID-related funding. That funding has ended. So in order to continue to fund transit, we need to continue to maximize 5307 federal funds available to support transit operations. The preliminary tax levy, this is preliminary because we're still in the initial stages of discussing the budget. The tax levy will be similar to last year, and last year it was at $14.53 per thousand valuation, and we're looking about the same amount for fiscal year 27 at this time. And I will turn to Sherri.
All right. Thank you.
Can we ask questions about those numbers there?
Yeah.
Is that wages and benefits or just wages?
Just wages.
Just what, how much of an increase in benefits?
Benefits, at this time we're able to levy for benefits in a general fund. And, increase in benefits was $386,000.
So that's one of the concerns about the new property tax legislation, if that would allow for those property and liability gets to be levied separately, benefits gets to be levied separately, as does transit. I believe the proposal is to, or at least one of the proposals is to lump them in all together, and there would only be the 2%. So obviously that would be a huge concern because the benefits, current employee benefits and cost of living would way over, use the 2% increase that's allowed. So that's a big question. And that's something that we might want, there's a few items of flexibility in this current budget that we may want to look at based on how those proposals are.
So that 2% compensation factor does not, what I'm hearing, does not apply to benefits. Because we all know healthcare is going up way beyond 2%.
Right, and that's what the concern is, because both property and casualty insurance and employee benefits, neither one of which, healthcare benefits, neither one of which falls, as you indicated, in a normal cost of living or inflationary number. So that is a huge issue.
Okay, thank you.
Ready? All right, thank you. I think everybody got the overview of Parks and Recreation and all 19 budgets, and this was provided for council. Looks like this in your package. I am going to just hit the very high points where we're going to be making some changes or working with some different departments. I won't go into program detail. Last night, this took me 45 minutes to go through with Parks and Recreation Commission, and I think everyone will throw things at me if I go that long again. So, the budget summary, just a couple informational points in FY25, what we just came out of last end of June. Our goal of revenue covering expenses was 61.1%. And we ended the fiscal year at 61.6%, or about $50,000 better than what we anticipated. In FY27, we are presenting a Parks and Recreation budget at 63% of revenue covering 63% of the expenses. So we're trying to grow that each year and get better and better at being revenue producing and covering those expenses. Just a reminder, this covers recreation and all of the recreation facilities, parks, and all of the building maintenance of all general fund facilities, Brown Deer Golf Club, and the Coralville Center for the Performing Arts. Highlights for this year for all of our budgets across the budget areas for Parks and Rec. We are not recommending an increase in our part-time salaries and wages. Last wage hold was in FY20, and we've been growing this wage scale steadily since FY20 and feel like we are still able to offer competitive wages until we get to FY28. So we're freezing that wage scale where it is. In parks, we are asking to spend and to cooperate with the stormwater reserves and the park reserves for a piece of equipment called a Ventrac. It mows steep slopes much easier than a tractor. It's small enough to maneuver in tighter quarters like our biocells and in between tree plantings. And this will help us maintain stormwater practices installed either in lieu of fee, am I saying that right, Scott? In fee in lieu, I've got that backwards, or as part of city projects, such as the Auburn Ridge Outlot for Auburn Ridge Subdivision, which is a stream mitigation that was installed by that developer, Biscuit Creek Wetland Mitigation, Coral Ridge Biocells, Stables Retention Basin, Oakdale Extension Road right-of-way, detention area, and all of our flood berms. This is a much safer piece of equipment, a smaller piece of equipment, but safer for our staff to maintain those areas. That is not an increase to the parks reserves, but it is an ask to spend $45,000 split between parks and stormwater reserves. We also are asking in part-time wages in parks for an increase of $7,444, which is an average of 20 hours a week over 24 weeks of the mowing season to work with the Ventrac and also work in our wetland and stream mitigations. In building maintenance, we are looking at our project reserve planning for our HVAC control project, which I talked about several years in a row. This is totaling about a $500,000 project. Over time, we've been putting away $50,000 a year and released that funding last June of the first $150,000 for updates at the library, city hall, fire station 2, and a small project at the rec center to just get us by for the next couple of years and keep staff from having to climb ladders to turn heat up and down. We're asking to advance, we are continuing to ask for that $50,000 in reserves for the HVAC controller work. We're also asking for an additional $11,500 so that we can advance into the FY27 project, Fire Station 1. Currently, Orey and our building maintenance team are controlling the heat at that particular location by a valve on the boiler. All of our VAVs are gone. All of our controller boxes are gone. There is no communication with that system. So it's a system that we want to get pulled on to our base point system and get that corrected. So that's an $11,500 increase. In the recreation budget, we're asking to move our afternoon receptionist position from 4 afternoons a week to 5 afternoons a week, from 50% time to 62.5% time. This is a position that we actually had both morning and afternoon clerical assistants before COVID, cut back to 20 hours a week, and we're moving that forward. They answer the phone, they supervise the building from that noon to 2:30. They're that first point of contact. When our administrative assistant is out of the building, they manage all of our POS systems, work in tandem with the staff and with finance on bill paying and all of that area, as well as do all of the marketing functions that we do with the department and our active net outreach. So they already are working in trying to get all that done in that 4 days a week. This is also a position we see as working towards full-time by the time that we get to opening the new recreation center and indoor pool. So we don't want to, put that all in one budget. We'd like to creep it up over time and know that we'll use that already. In the recreation budget, we're also asking to put in cameras, both inside and out at the youth sports park, hopefully to address mischief and vandalism at that park system, but also keep an eye on our interior where we move cash and a lot of electronic transactions as well as product in and out. We use cameras at our Creekside Ballpark location as well. In partnership budgets, we have an addition of a preschool after-school program at our partnership schools, Worrell, Wickham, and Van Allen. This is a request to run an after-school program for preschoolers that attend all-day preschool and or the afternoon program. And the district is asking us to run those programs to help partner with them so that it makes it more attractive for people to use their all-day preschool program or their afternoon preschool program. This, to the partnership budgets, is really just money in, money out wash. It's $68,000 in revenue and $67,000 in expenses over the 3 budgets. It is a program that we are not trying to get into that goal of being 2 or 3% above in revenue in that area. So I wanted to make you aware. We're also looking at starting a new STEM program at Worrell as a second summer camp for 3 weeks in the summer. It's a kit-type STEM program that is purchased, but staff run that particular program. In the Coralville Center for Performing Arts budget, we are, some good news, I'll touch on some good news first, because FY25 was pretty dismal for the Coralville Center for Performing Arts budget. We had a show lineup that really underperformed to the tune of about $100,000 to $130,000 less than what it was anticipated to be. The good news is we've seen a big turnaround in the show lineup for the City Circle season this year, and we're up over $100,000 in ticket sales already, just mid-year. And we're also up about $20,000 over last year this time in our education programs. Our big ask in the Coralville Center for Performing Arts budget is continuing to work on how do we make this budget perform to the standard that we want in terms of getting it to a subsidy that is, our goal right now is $160,000. We'd like to really get that to $120,000 or $100,000. And really the place to do that is we've already looked at our rental fees. We've already worked with a professional in helping us set those, and helping us value our product that we have out there. We have production, we do our own productions, and that's another area of the arts that most performing arts places will look at doing. We do a little bit of presenting, but we have a lot of arts organizations that already present, and so we don't see that as a big growth area for the Center for Performing Arts. And then, of course, 4 years ago, we added the education programs, which have really performed very well, are supporting themselves and starting to support other areas of the Center for Performing Arts. So the last area that we have not explored is really getting into the area of development funds and having a development director who really works every day to work with those who might donate money, might sponsor, get them in and really create those relationships in the arts area and start to raise those asks over time. So we're asking for a half-time development director, and in year one, that would be a cost of about $47,000. Year two, almost $49,000, and then working up from there, depending on if it stays half-time or full-time. We've been working with a woman who's on our City Circle board, but also is a part of a group called Huron Group, and they train people to be development directors. They train organizations to help work with their development director to maximize those profits. And our goal is in the first year that development director would produce at least $60,000, year two, $120,000, and by year three, $240,000. So we're looking at this as an ad for 3 years and really working hard at where we can get with this job. One of the ideas that I'm proposing for funding this is to move the CAM fees from the CCPA budget into the tax increment financing district for town center. The CAM fees cover common area maintenance of the building. All CCPA expenses still stay within the CCPA budget. Because this building is accessed from 5 a.m. to 11 p.m. due to all the other business entities, those CAM fees when we first started out low, they were manageable, $25,000, $30,000. They have increased greatly in the last 5 to 10 years, and it's because areas of lock systems, security systems, camera systems, greater vandalism, and greater cleaning expenses. So we are asking to move those, whether it be permanently or whether it be temporary for those 3 years until we can make up and get that development director going, and then bring them back in-house at the CCPA. The other position we're asking for in the CCPA budget is to reduce the part-time wages by $18,000, and you're moving those wages and asking for a half-time clerical assistant and front-of-house coordinator. This would be covered by that reduction and by a 1 to 2 ticket fee price increase, dollars per ticket price increase, and a $1 to $2 ticket increase in program fees. So that would be covered by income. And lastly, in Brown Deer Golf Club, we've produced a budget knowing that we are anticipating Finkbine's closure until spring to early summer of 2027 to be advantageous to Brown Deer. we're looking at somewhere in the rounds of 7,000 to 10,000 rounds up next year, and predicting that going forward, we will keep 4,000 to 5,000 of those rounds based on information about where St. Mine wants to be in future years. That it's nice to have Sean McCarty on our staff, who is also an alumni of the University of Iowa Hawkeye Golf Program. So he's been able to get information about where they'd like to be. They would like to stay in the 20,000 rounds a year market area for their rounds. We sit right now at about 35,000 rounds a year, and we anticipate that we're going to be about 42,000 rounds in 2026. With that, we are also really asking our staff, our maintenance staff, to do amazing jobs with what we're doing. You can run a golf course in two ways. You can run it with lower rounds and less play, which is obviously better for your turf, or you can run it with more rounds, more money, and put more money into your course and into your staff who's doing those operations at your course. So we're asking to reinstate our golf superintendent level from our golf coordinator level that we have now, and we're asking to increase and change a golf ops manager position that we've been unable to hire because we just had the salary too low, to an assistant golf superintendent position. Both of these are limited employee agreements. They are written with a flat amount of money, or amount of money year, usually grows 1.5% over the course of a 3-year contract per year. And then they get a flat stipend of $750 a month for their health care, and they pay for their own health care. Part of their salary, part of the reason we have limited employee agreements is because in the golf world, there's also a lot of opportunities for them, for those staff, to work with, to take trips, to golf, to receive golf funding, golf gear, and all of that, of course, as a city employee, they're not allowed to do. So this is what we came up with about 15 years ago, working with Terry Kading, who was then the finance director, and working on how we could balance both worlds for our, especially our pros, who are competing pros and still on the PGA circuit. Both of these increases are budgeted in the proposed FY26 amended practice budget that was presented and approved in August of 2025. And we proposed that the cost would be covered with rate increases of $1 per round and $1 per cart, along with those budgeted extra rounds that we'll have over time. And we are predicting golf to net at least $168,000. This past summer, this past fiscal year, we netted $330,000. So we still are being conservative, hopefully, with our numbers there. And at the budget presented, the difference from FY26 to FY27 is negative $46,274. We wouldn't be able to do that without the performance of the golf, and that also includes moving $60,000 from the CCPA budget temporarily to the TIF budget. Any questions?
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
With the part-time positions holding the same wage, what is that at currently?
I figured it out. So these are some examples that I put together for our Parks and Recreation Commission last night. In FY20, a concessions worker made $10.10 an hour, and they now make $13.20 an hour. A lifeguard made $10.80 an hour, and they now make $14.70 an hour. Pool managers are $12.75 in FY20 and $16.70 in FY27. Youth counselors, $10.80 and they went to $14.20. Umpires, $18.50 and they now make $23 an hour. And our park seasonals make $11.75 in FY20 and in current budget $14 an hour. Our staff also receive what's called a wage boost by completing all of their staff training and all of our NeoGov trainings, which are recorded. Once they do all of their paperwork, complete all of their trainings, within 30 days of hire, they receive a 50% wage boost. About 70% of our staff complete those wage boost requirements.
And so you're freezing till 2028, which would be next budget cycle?
Sorry, what
You're
about?
gonna freeze them till the 20?
Right, it would be
So the next
until
budget.
F27, right? Through 27, it would be that same wage scale that we have now.
In line with that, how many hours average do part-time workers work?
It can really vary. You know, an umpire might work 1 day a week and work 3 hours. Our before and after school program youth counselors typically will put in 15 to 20. Our summer employees push the envelope of 35 to 40 hours a week. Lifeguards, pool managers, so, yeah.
What are we doing with the restaurant around here?
Sorry?
What are we doing with the restaurant around here?
We are meeting with firms. We took RFQs. The only response we got, or RFPs, we took was from a firm out of New York State, and decided, based on some reference calls and just thinking about how you respond to issues from New York State, decided that we would not go with that company. We set up another meeting. We have one tomorrow, we have one Thursday, so we're just talking to a lot of people about what we're doing. And so currently we're looking at the upstairs banquet space and a little bit of the leisure activity downstairs in-house.
Well, next, we'll have Alison present library.
The library budget proposal is pretty straightforward. In terms of revenues, the only revenues we really bring in are the contractual fees that are paid by Johnson County and University Heights for library services for those individuals that live in those communities. And that's based, there's slightly different formulas for each of those contracts, but overall based on per capita, average per capita support for library service in the state of Iowa, based on the service population of those two populations, and then the use, so the use of the library by Johnson County residents, which is pretty robust, and University Heights. And then we have a few fees. As you know, we are fine-free, really trying to eliminate the barriers for anyone using the library. But there are fees for lost materials and damaged materials. We do still charge fees for those things, and replacement cards, although there are a couple times during the year that you can get your card replaced for free, and it's just like $1. So those revenues are pretty minor. In terms of the expenditures for the upcoming year, probably the biggest story for our budget this year is the replacement of the public computer array. So you see the transfer in from the computer replacement reserve on the first page of our budget there, and it's, I talked about it in the last paragraph of my memo, but we are, be about $100,000 to replace that system. That's 40 thin clients and a couple servers, and the UDS enterprise software. Those all are run on a VDI system, virtual interface. So we'll be getting a brand new system for those and new computers. They've really they have reached the end of their life. But we've been planning for that for a number of years by building up that reserve fund, so that the reserve money will come in and pay for that $100,000. And we still have a fairly healthy computer replacement reserve balance even after that. After taking that out, we put $10,000 a year in, and you'll see at the end of the budget that we will still be putting another $10,000 back into that budget, continuing to build it on an annual basis. In terms of staff, we, other than the cost of living increases and the increase in the cost of benefits, we haven't added any additional staff or anything. We're not asking for that. We are still continuing to try to integrate the community community education outreach position into a full-time library supported position. That was a grant funded or partially grant funded position initially. So we've had that for a year and budgeted this year part of those grant funds, and then it's supported from board-directed funds as well. But like we did with the Community Resources Navigator position over a number of years, we want to integrate that fully into the library staff budget. The other story for the library is just our materials budget. Our staff, of course, account for about 70% of our budget, which is slightly lower than most libraries, but our materials budget is our next biggest budget line. And you may have heard that our biggest book vendor, Baker and Taylor, is the primary library book vendor in the United States, closed very abruptly at the end of the year. We probably purchased 80 to 85% of our books through them. And I'm talking about our physical books, which account for 60 to 65% of our circulation. But we still, purchase, 4,500 to 5,000 books a year. And Baker and Taylor was really equipped to deal with libraries. They had a wonderful search system that had peer reviews of materials, not just reviews that are trying to sell you a book. These were actual reviews, so there was an easy tool for librarians to evaluate materials. They had the back end of the system was set up to transfer records electronically, so that EDI transfer of library records was very smooth and easy. And the closure of Baker and Taylor has left us and all libraries kind of scrambling for other vendors, and the price inevitably for those materials is greater now. And so that materials budget is a 5% increase over the current FY26 budget. Luckily, we did have a contract already with Ingram, another bookseller, and so that we were ahead of the game compared to many libraries, and we already had a contracting relationship with them, so that's going very smoothly. Other than that, there really isn't. Everything else is pretty flat compared to last year, and I don't think I really have anything to. The capital office equipment and other computer equipment is all on a rotation basis, and we try to do a little bit every year, so it's not a big expense any one year. To be replacing some computer carrels to go along with the replacement of the public computer system. That's about it. Are there questions?
we'll have the Johnson present community development and housing.
Thank you. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Dave Johnson. I'm the Community Development Director for the city. In the Community Development Department, we have three core functions, those functions being city planning, building services, as well as housing, rental housing inspections. With that, we have anticipated revenue of $613,400 in our building, planning, and zoning services for next year. This is fairly consistent with previous years. Much of this revenue is derived from building permits as well as plan review fees, subdivision filing fees, and other miscellaneous expenses. However, again, our building permit revenues is really what helps support the building services functions. I calculate these a number of ways. Each of them is a statistical analysis based on actual revenue and actual expense figures from the last 3 or 5 fiscal years. Sometimes I will take a 5-year average, sometimes I'll take a 3-year average, sometimes I'll take a trim mean. And in the budget worksheet report provided to City Council, those explanations are provided. Trim means I'll take in those cases where there's a lot of variation in the data and past revenue projections, and it's not uncommon when forecasting revenue for building services, things like that, that there will be outliers. The big point that we want to make is that we look at the data and we don't want to have any big misses, because it gets increasingly difficult to make up those gaps in today's city budget. So, rental permit revenue, that is estimated to be $290,000. That's a 3% increase from fiscal year 26. That reflects an anticipated 200 additional rental units in Coralville. Of note, there are no new operating equipment or software requests in the FY27 community development budget. There are no new personnel requests and no changes to application or service fees in our department for FY27. So our total department revenue is projected to be $903,400, and total expenses are projected to be $835,708. Be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Next, Scott will present engineering budget.
Scott Larson, city engineer. I'll start with the engineering budget. So the engineering department provides personnel for reviewing, designing, and inspecting city infrastructure, which includes streets, water mains, etc., for public street projects, subdivisions, and developments to ensure compliance with the adopted local, state, and federal standards. Personnel-wise, we have 6 full-time staff members and 1 3/4 front desk assistant position. Our personnel, we get involved with monitoring and enforcing the MS4 permit requirements and managing the work and utility installations that occur within the public right-of-way. Just want to note that our construction technician position is actually funded through the streets department using use funds. And then our GIS specialist position receives 45% of salary through engineering, but the remainder is split between water, wastewater, streets, and stormwater. In the engineering department, our primary revenue sources are right-of-way permits. Just wanted to mention I had a typo there. The construction site runoff permit fees actually stay in the stormwater budget that I'll talk about next. But on average, the right-of-way permit revenue can vary anywhere from the high or just under 10,000 up to, I think the highest we've ever seen is maybe 24,000 a couple of years ago when we had a lot of the fiber to the home built out in Coralville. For the engineering budget this year, we're just asking for an increase to engineering consulting, increase of 10,000 from 40,000 to 50,000, and that can cover either one task engineering consulting task that comes up, or multiple small ones. It's just hard to say from year to year. We are decreasing our technology consulting line by $18,000 from $20,000 to $2,000. That's really due to the in-house work that our assistant city engineer and GIS specialist have accomplished over the past year and a half. And so that's allowed us to free up that additional budget. And then the remainder of our expense account lines are generally unchanged from fiscal year 26. Any questions on the engineering budget before I jump to stormwater? Vicky?
Just run an engineering consulting, what does that generally entail?
Yeah, it could be, one example would be for, let's say we have a storm sewer repair project that comes up due to a failure. Something we may need to do ahead of that work is actually survey property pins, have temporary, maybe even permanent storm sewer easement plats created. Those have to be, that surveying work and the plat creation has to be done by a licensed professional land surveyor, which we don't have on staff. So, and there may be other instances where, another example, we don't have structural engineers on staff, so if we have maybe an issue with a bridge deck, deteriorating or something, that provides a small amount of money that we can hire a specialty type consultant to look at those issues for us.
And are you just foreseeing using more of those services? Is that what you do?
It's just the general cost of those, but it's also just the variability. We just don't know. Right now, this isn't for a planned expense. It's really for those unknowns that can be pop up. All right, on the stormwater operations budget, this budget provides funding for 70% of our stormwater coordinator's salary, 100% of the stormwater technician's salary, and 10% of the GIS specialist salary. So this staff oversees operation of the MS4 permit, which stands for Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System. And that's a requirement of the Environmental Protection Agency and the Iowa Department of Natural Resources, which includes management of erosion, sediment control, illicit discharge monitoring and reporting, post-construction stormwater, which is other terms, green infrastructure.
Can I interrupt you just?
Yes, go ahead.
We're not able to find it in our.
It's 13.
The stormwater memo?
Thanks.
Okay.
It's 13, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Go ahead.
Good?
Thank you,
All right,
Scott.
sure. And then we do good housekeeping and stormwater education programs, and also stormwater outfall inspections. So that really, that last one entails going to every single storm sewer outlet that we have in the city and checking for illicit discharge, which could be discolored water or some unknown fluid that we can then sample and trace up the pipe system and see if we have somebody, dumping motor oil in the intake out in front of their house, that type of thing. So, but that's a required inspection. The stormwater operation budget spans outside of just the engineering department and brings in also the wastewater and streets departments as well. The stormwater ops budget provides funding for operation and maintenance of our 10 stormwater pump stations that are used for flood protection. Those pump stations are maintained and operated by our wastewater department. The primary revenue source for this budget is the stormwater utility fee that we receive from residential and commercial properties, and also the construction site runoff permits that I had mistakenly added to the engineering department memo. Stormwater reserve this year, or current fiscal year, I just wanted to note that that line is contributing roughly $117,000 to the purchase of a street sweeper replacement for the streets department, because sweeping streets, keeping intakes clean is all part of the overall MS4 permit process that we have to follow. So, budget highlights, similar to engineering, we're just asking for an increase in consulting engineering, $10,000 the stormwater BMP program is for partial and full reimbursement for rain garden installation, soil quality restoration, which is commonly referred to as SQR, and timber stand improvement by individual property owners and in many cases sometimes homeowners associations and condo associations can come to us and apply for a grant application. And typically we are reimbursing 50% of the cost up to $2,000 per practice. It's a popular program, so that's why we're asking for a slight increase. We are decreasing the construction stormwater lines by $17,000 from $26,000 down to $9,000, really due to the fact that we don't have a specific storm sewer project identified at this time. But the next bullet there just indicates that, I was going to mention too, we have reserves that can be pulled in if we identify a storm sewer repair project, like a sudden failure with a storm outlet that needs to be repaired. We do have the reserves available for that. And then in general, the rest of the expense lines for stormwater operations remain unchanged from the current fiscal year. Any questions on stormwater?
I'll present telecommunications. Telecommunications budget, we have one full-time employee and two part-time employees. It's the budget itself, we have a decrease in revenues around $8,000 due to decrease in franchise fees we get from Mediacom. At the same time, expenses going up by $5,000, and those expenses has to do with wages for the employees I mentioned, as well as professional IT services. Overall budget is very comparable to fiscal year 26, except those changes that I mentioned. Any questions? Well, next we'll have Kyle present the police and animal control budget.
Thank you. You'll notice, look through our budget, that we try to consolidate a little bit, clean things up this year in FY 27. So there's some lines which will show zero budgeted, while other lines are a little bit higher. So we're just trying to clean up some lines that had redundancies to them. I noted on pages 2 and 3 of my memo, we're asking for one additional police officer this year. As the increased burden of added population, added areas in town is on the police department. It's been since 2022, the last time we added a member to our staff. So we're requesting one of those this year. Requesting $5,000 for a sergeant assessment center. This is something that the Civil Service Commission likes us to do when we're promoting an individual. We're anticipating the retirement of Sergeant Jeremy Sutton in January 2027, at which point we'll look to backfill that position. Our computer aided dispatch system, TAC-10, is used throughout the county with fire, EMS, and law enforcement, and we have reached our capacity with them. So across the county, we're looking to replace that system in the coming years. It will be a very, very large expense, and we have no money set aside for that. I'm looking at about $100,000 into reserves to lessen the burden on that down the road. The sheriff, for comparison, has $1 million set aside in reserves already, so we've got some catch up to do. I don't know what that expense will be or what the timeline is of that project, but it is coming down the road. There's also some funding set aside for some new CJIS security requirements that became known to us in the middle of this budget year. We're trying to figure out how to adapt to those. $18,000 allocated for the second year of the flock safety contract in this budget. We're looking to add a second mental health liaison along with the Sheriff's Office, North Liberty Police Department, and us. The funding set aside, the request from this budget has no match to it. But we are obviously going to request grant funding from our Primary Care Association again. Unknown if we'll get that, and we won't know that until much further down in the budget process, unfortunately. So the money allocated there at this point in time is for 2 full-time positions. We would pay 1/3 of the salary and benefits of each of those positions. And then, as always, the fleet rotation throughout the department is in the police department budget there. As we look to animal control, we're down approximately $13,000 in animal expenses we paid to Iowa City for the animal shelter, so that budget's gone down a little bit. Last year we had 13% of all intakes. This year we're down to 11.7, so that's kind of where we're at animal control wise. Katie?
You mentioned, new areas, as far as like the need for another officer.
Yeah.
Can you just say more about that?
Yeah, I think the ever-growing community, we talk about District Villas, Bridgewater, Forever Heights, the Gather Hour Project, the Parkview Buildings, Bridgewater, I list them all there in the memo. I think as we see the population of Coralville continue to grow, we see our calls for service continue to grow across the department, and the ever need for additional staffing to keep up with that growing population, the growing calls for service that we have in the department.
Next, we'll have Orey present the fire budget.
Okay, again, this year, we don't see a lot of change in the fire department budget. I'll just hit a couple highlights. Revenue will be down. We have, Medical Classification Center had been paying for fire protection contract for quite a few years, long before my time even. But they realized that state law does not require them to pay for fire protection. We have to cover them free of charge. So that decreases because of that one contract. For the most part, our revenue for permits are down a little bit. Our permit system primarily is fire alarm and sprinkler, and facilities that we're building in town right now are more residential based that do not require those systems, so we're not seeing that revenue right now. The University of Iowa does still pay a contract, fire protection contract. The Board of Regents has chosen to do that on their own, and the state legislature allowed them to do that. So we still do that throughout the state of Iowa. So we still have that contract in place. And we have a small contract with East Lucas Township, or Northeast Lucas Township. That would be the Limit Road area, if you're familiar with that. And that's just the houses or homes that are there now, the current tax rate. They're not really building anything new over there, so that pretty much stays the way it is. Our increases are really related mostly to what was mentioned earlier with salaries and benefits. The normal costs, we're not adding anybody or any additional raises. But medical exams, our insurance provider, our workers' comp provider, does require us to do physicals on everybody, and that, as we know, healthcare costs are going up, and so our physical costs are going up also. And we've just been told by the workers' comp folks that we need to do these physicals from day one. We have been waiting a couple months to give some of the volunteers a chance to decide if they want to stay, but we'll probably see a little bit of an increase when we add that into next year. Not the class starting this month, but next month, so next year's class will probably be physicals from day one. And I'll probably be able to stay compliant with them, so. And then our PPE costs, that's our fire gear, coats, pants, gloves, hat, hood, helmet, stuff you see firefighters wear. Short, the SCBA, there's a slight increase there, 5,000, just because we see that cost going up every year also. We try to purchase, if nothing gets damaged, we try to purchase 10 sets a year, so we rotate the 10 of those. They have to be replaced every 10 years. We cannot use them after that. We do use them for a little bit of training, so we don't damage the good stuff, but any structural firefighting that we do, we have to have compliant gear for. So we're not asking for any additional for the vehicle replacement line item. We've been setting $400,000 a year away for that. We're still on target. The costs of the apparatus are going up tremendously every year, a lot more than they used to, especially after COVID. A lot of that has to do with parts of vehicle emission controls, requirements for EPA, that kind of stuff. We are not purchasing any engines or ladders this year, but we will see one capital plan starts in fiscal year 29, I believe, first or little bit of understanding, the next engine I purchased will probably be about 1.2 million. The next ladder will probably be about 2 million. That's just what the cost of it now. We're still setting aside 25,000 for our SCBA replacement program. That is our compressed air cylinders that we are on our back when we go into structure fires. We have now replaced, I think, all but about 3 models that are not quite geared out yet. And we're setting aside money for the actual packs themselves. And that cost has gone up every year, of course. This is one area that we have been asking for a grant every year since I've become chief. That's the last 5, 6 years. We just haven't been fortunate enough to secure that grant for various reasons. But we continue to put that money away. Right now, we're only going to replace ones that are non-replaceable. We can't fix them. One of the issues is that it's a safety issue that it's going to, with the newer technology, is going to affect us. If we start replacing them, we're probably going to have to try to replace them all because it's going to be tough for a firefighter to know which one they got on the truck, which one they don't, because the technology is so much safer now than it was before. A lot of items out there. So the only other thing I mentioned, and I'll talk about this more in depth when I meet with council maybe for my annual report this year. I just want to mention that we are seeing issues with retention. Primarily, folks do this for a while and have lack of time. That's really what it comes down to. When they get hired someplace, I can tell you just the last 6 months, I've lost 3 alone to Iowa City. It's just, that's what the folks join our department for, is to get hired and move on. Or, that's unfortunate for me, but fortunately for them, they get engaged, get married, have a family, and now they don't have time for the fire service because we do require a lot of time from our folks. So I'm just putting that out there that, there's different ways that we can look at this in the future, but unfortunately, they're all going to be tied to some fiscal fund that's going to be needed. So we'll continue to look for grants for that also. Most of those come with matching fund requirements. That's it. Any questions?
Next, we'll have Eric present road use and streets and solid waste budgets.
The street department budget, that funds personnel equipment for maintenance, for streets, traffic safety, street lighting, storm sewers, and snow and ice control. All the funds for the street department are financed through the State of Iowa Road Use Tax Fund. Every year they give us an estimate of what funds will happen in the year. And this year they estimated us at $140 per capita, so that comes out to about 3.1 million, and that's a 50-cent decrease from last year. So it's the first time in a while we've had to decrease their estimates. So the FY27 budget reflects about 0.5% decrease for 26. So for service and commodities, everything's remained steady, but then personnel and services, those have gone up about 44,000 this year. And balance the budget with that decrease, we're reducing the reserves for equipment for future years. And a few of the highlights for this coming year, so our major equipment reserves are replacing a 350 dump body, 2019 pickup, our 2009 back trailer, and the 2016 plow truck. And one thing we'll continue to work on over the next year is evaluating a 750 Camp Cardinal site down there to eventually relocate the relocate the solid waste trucks and the employees down there. Right now, we have an engineering firm working on a 20-year growth study for that. Just trying to get everything figured out for the cost and how it's will be laid out in the future. And that's it for streets, unless somebody has questions on that. So the solid waste budget, solid waste collects all the refuse, recycling, and yard waste. Provide personnel equipment for landfill fees for the collection of those items. And FY27 27 budget, we're anticipating about $40,000 increase from additional customers last year, and an additional 90,000 with rate increases, totaling about 100,000 additional revenue. Overall, everything's stayed the same except for personnel costs, just with everything else in personnel. And a few of the highlights for this coming year, we're proposing a rate increase for cart fees. The cart fees, those haven't increased since 2009 with highway refuse carts were first introduced. So a proposal on 35 gallon carts, increasing the fee from $4.17 a month to $5 a month, and the 65 gallon carts from $7 to $8.50 a month. And that's for refuse carts only, not recycling carts. And with that, that would increase revenues about 80,000. And then on we also offer bulk item collection, where residents can call and say, can pick up a couch, mattress, or whatever, and all other communities around the state charge that service, but they do it for free. So proposing would basically go up here, Iowa City's fee structure on that, where it's a $10 service fee is pick it up, then items would, for the most part, items are $10 each. So if you have just one item, maybe a $20 pick up, two items would take you $30. So this year we'll be receiving a new unmanned refuse truck. The chassis on that was paid for in last year's budget, and this year's budget will have an additional $230,000. So pay for the body on that. And going forward, I feel like we need every 2 to 3 years look at the revenue, fees and everything, and plan on doing revenue increase every 2 to 3 years. And one thing that's not in the budget is the relocation of the recycling drop site from the First Street location that will be getting demolished in Galstad, Iowa. I have it in the CIP budget, but it's not, I don't have any good solid numbers yet to put into the budget. We're working on that currently. That's all I have at this time, unless there's any questions.
So, charging a pickup fee seems reasonable, but how's that tie in with Mayor's Cleanup Day, where they really do it for free, essentially?
It's still gonna be done for free. It'd almost be easier for us if we had more in that week. It's just more efficient, have everybody out there doing it. Because a lot of our pickups will be like move outs, once a month, we get the same houses every couple months, just their own junk. They leave us, go pick up the junk somewhere else, they set it out for us to come pick it up. A lot of the places we pick up are the same ones. So yes, we'll still offer Mayor's Cleanup for free. I mean, yes, people can just follow off to that point, but if they want them before then, we'll check it.
And before Mayor's Cleanup, we also offer recycle swap for people to drop off.
Okay.
But Chair, does this include like appliances?
That is still separate.
That's still separate?
Yes, we charge for appliances
Yeah.
per. And I think a lot of our appliances are maybe $1 or might be around $18 or something for a stove and that, but we're gonna match Iowa City's, I think increase those like $2 a item.
Then we take it to the landfill?
Yes, we take it to Iowa City then we charge $18, but then Iowa City charges maybe $12 a day. So then we're getting $6 of the haul.
Jordan will present the water project.
So, my name is Jordan Altenhofen, Water Superintendent. So, we're the drinking water side of things, so we are responsible for the water treatment plant, obviously source water, getting it there, and then the distribution to get it to the homes, and then the metering. Another big task, we work really closely with utility billing on work orders, people calling about high consumption, we read the meters on a monthly basis, and then system locating and mapping as a big task, especially in the summertime when Construction's moving fast, there's a lot of that goes on. You know, big tip of the hat to finance and utility billing and administration on the revenue side of this. Obviously, we're a revenue generating department. One of the indicators is the rate that we charge for our water. You know, I typically don't get too far into the weeds on setting that rate. That's what they do to make sure that we're able to fund our operations. You know, just real quick, this budget is fairly boring. You are excluding the debt service and the transfers to reserves. Essentially, this is a flat budget compared to last year. There are some, you know, things that we were able to pull off last year. There's some new things that we're needing to pull off this year. Essentially, it's a wash. You know, real quick, I just kind of spelled out some of those. Specifically, probably the biggest high dollar amount item would be reserve funded. It's in our CIP. It's our valve maintenance trailer. Essentially, this is a trailer that has a small pot vac, a hydro vacuum system on it, and then it has a hydraulically driven arm that can extend out and operate valves. You know, the old classic way of doing that is, you know, 4 people and 2 really long cheater bars, which is a great way to get hurt. This trailer is an automated way so that we can actually exercise these valves up and down without breaking somebody's back. You know, so this trailer, the one that we have is over 10 years old. It was a demo model. It is still operating well, but the intention there is to more or less replace it before we're beyond useful life. That way we don't, you know, maybe we get a little revenue out of it, and then also we're not running into a situation where we don't have that trailer operational. Past that, the other requests are fairly minor. You know, I am allocating some extra funds in our infrastructure repairs, specifically for lead service line investigations. Basically, regulatory changes are coming down the tracks. 2027 lead service line inventories. If you have any unknown or lead lines, it's going to be a regulatory nightmare. We're looking really good. I am down to 30 unknown service lines, no lead, and really just to the point where it's advantageous for us to just do what we need to get those identified. So that's realistically looking at hiring a subcontractor to assist us with some pot vacuum and physically spotting lines. My intentions there also is if I come across a lead service line, I'm just going to replace it. I'll work with the homeowner, we'll get it replaced. It's not worth trying to, you know, if we're in a different situation where we had 1,000 lead service lines or even 100 lead service lines, I expect I'm not going to come across any, but if I do come across one, I'm just going to address it in the budget. And I actually have that same kind of money in the current budget. This spring, I'm going to get started on that work. It depends on what we come across. If I come across 30 lead lines, $50,000 won't be enough to replace 30 service lines. But if I come across, you know, 2 or 3, you know, this is something I'm adding where I can get those service lines in place. The other item in here that's probably the more expensive, unique item in coming out of the operation budget is some HMI panels. So basically, not to get into the weeds too far, you know, our water plant, our booster station, they run off of programmed logic controllers. These are basically industrial computers that once the data's in there, they more or less make the decisions and operate. You know, those PLCs dump into our fiber network, which basically reach our SCADA software, so it makes it user-friendly. I can read it, I can understand it. I can tell the system what pumps I want in auto, I can tell how high I want the tower. That's our operational control. The way our system is set up is it relies entirely on the fiber network. So for these PLCs to be working, it has to go through fiber to reach our software. If we went dark, we would be 100% manual at that point, which would be pretty tricky to do at the plant and things like that. These HMI panels, what they are is basically a direct to PLC screen that works separate from fiber, but they work with the PLC. It's redundancy. So with the PLC screens, if we ever had to kill fiber 100%, I can now still leave the plant running in auto. I can allow the booster station to run in auto. I'm just now using it on the touch screen that doesn't have as cool of graphics as the SCADA system does, but it would still operate that well. We'd still have manual things that we'd have to do, like monitoring tower levels, things like that, but at least I wouldn't have multiple people stationed at the water plant and the booster station. It'd be physically turning pumps off and on to operate. So that's really the higher dollar amount there. That $45,000, that's specifically 2 of these screens, one down at the booster station, one at the water plant. I will say, I'm assuming that number is pretty high. Our integrator that we use for all of our water plant work and things like that, they typically, when they give me rough estimates, they estimate high. So I don't expect those 2 items to be 45, but that's the number they gave me. The other are really minor. I got some trees I want to take down, a couple nuisance trees at the plant, up at the well 16 site. Now that we're back in there with a new well, we've discovered there's a few trees back there that are dead, that are probably dangerous trees to keep up. So we're going to take those down. Can't take them down as part of the project because of the bees. There's a specific time window that we're allowed to clear trees, a part of the funding. Ultimately, this will get done just outside of the project. And then the minor equipment purchase, dehumidifiers. Essentially, the water plant, if you've been there, these are open tanks. It's a very humid building, and humidity just ruins everything over time. So I'm going to try some commercial grade dehumidifiers, see if we get ahead of it or not. So this is the place to start. A lot of times you'll see water plants that will have 10, 20 of these things set up and running to get the humidity out. So that's a goal to try to get the humidity under control. Really, past that, this budget, the big list that's going to be happening in the next quite a few years is going to be the debt service fees. Basically the funding for larger projects, specifically, pretty much 90% of the CIP on the water side is related to source water expansion. And that's really what I have.
Any questions? Okay, next Chris will present wastewater budget.
Chris Worrell, I'm the new wastewater superintendent. Our wastewater department is going on budget. This is an increase in this fiscal year 2027, about $720,000 or 37% of last year's budget. The amount includes expense items 6013779. The large increase is due to additional funds added to reserve accounts as compared to previous years. The additional funds are necessary for unexpected repairs and replacements, as well as planned capital improvements. The capital improvements will include the following. The Third Avenue lift station is going to need some electrical upgrades. The PLC down there is failing. Basically, it's the computer down there is failing. It was 2000, I think. And we can no longer find new parts, and we've been having to take parts out of an old raw building that we had decommissioned back in 2000. So we're going to have to do some upgrading there. The Oakdale trunk sewer repairs, which has been a planned project for a few years now, that will be replacing manholes that have been damaged severely by H2S gas. The sanitary sewer CIPP, which is clear in place pipe repairs, is also kind of a planned project where we pick a small section of town, have a company come in and videotape the sewer lines, see if there's any problems. If we find some problems, we'll kind of go ahead and get with the engineering, come up with a plan to get those damaged areas fixed, and that's usually a year after the videotaping, so we kind of get a plan. Last is the gravity belt MCC panel electric upgrades. We are adding a new discharge pump for redundancy on the back of the gravity belt thickener. Adding VFD controls for that. Also adding and upgrading electrical buckets for some new digester mixing pumps. The existing buckets were, I think, from 1968 or early 70s when the original building was built, and they're getting outdated and really not quite big enough for the new VFDs and that kind of stuff. So we're trying to get creative on how we're going to repair that. That's pretty much all I got. So if anyone has any questions.
It's good to have Chris here as our new superintendent. Chris is not new to the city though. 30, how many years?
34.
34 years. He's been with us, so it's good to have him. We started yesterday.
Yep.
He retired officially last Friday.
Okay, next we'll have Vicky present transit and parking budgets.
Vicky, Robrock, transit and parking. Overall, our transit budget is remaining pretty much the same with the exception of the North Liberty service will be ending at the end of June. So we did see obviously a decrease in revenue as well as a decrease in operating expenses. I think one of the biggest items for us are our situation with our capital reserves. Hard to believe, but we're already in year 17 of our first low floor bus that we received. Typically, the useful life is 12 years or 500,000 miles. So our first one is 17 years old, and our next four are 16 years old. We typically know that we're not going to get those funded at 12 years. We depend heavily on grant funds from the federal government that they usually provide anywhere from 80 to 85%. I'm anticipating that those 5 buses will come up for replacement probably in the next 3 to 5 years. The DOT annually gives us a programming cost for buses as we're preparing our consolidated grant application, and they're estimating that they will be $1 million a piece. To put that in perspective, the last new bus we purchased was in 2020, right at the start of COVID, and it was under 500,000. So they drastically increased in cost. So that's kind of the request for the capital reserves. There is also the request for $132,000 for a fare collection system. However, that is a carryover from this year depending on timing of the project when it finishes, so it's not a duplication. Any questions about transit?
This is something we've been talking about for the last 3 years, that the COVID funding would be going away, which is what significantly decreased the subsidy for the transit system because there was no match required for the COVID funds. So we are, each year, if you'll look through the history, our amount of subsidy has gone up since then. So that's a big issue. The other one is that Vicky's been working on is the 5307 is that right?
Yep, the operating fund.
The federal operating funds, and there's a lot of requirements and restrictions to go with that, and so she's working to maximize that amount of money. And I think you've got close to 100%.
Fair.
For this coming fiscal
Yes.
year. We still have excess funds left from the previous years because we used the COVID funds instead of the 5307. But we don't have the expense to go against those funds. So very complicated. Vicky's doing a good job of trying to maximize our federal and state funds for that.
Okay, I will move into parking. Again, not a lot of changes with that. We are requesting a 3.25% increase for parking cashiers and enforcement. Both of these positions are part-time. We've struggled for the last, well, typically since COVID, to fill positions. A lot of the cashier positions are not guaranteed any hours. It's very event-driven, so it's a little hard to attract potential employees. Our big ask would probably be the continuation of the 5% increase in the parking facilities capital replacement. We set aside in FY26 $165.38 per space. With the 5% increase, it would be $173.65. Our facilities, we've been very fortunate. We're relatively new for a lot of years. However, Town Center ramp and the north ramp at the IRL are both 20 years old now, hard to believe. And so we're going to see some maintenance issues and things that we're going to need to replace. The other capital request was to replace 2 level 2 chargers at the west ramp that are past their useful life and no longer supported. We budgeted for 2 for this fiscal year, and then we'd like to replace 2 more next. And then we also show the $47,000 for moving to the EMV chip card readers in place of the mag stripes, more secure in the north ramp and south lot. Again, this is not an additional ask, it's just a carryover in case the project isn't wrapped up by the end of this fiscal year.
Okay, next is hotel. I'll do the presentation for the hotel. Hotel recently underwent a nice renovation that was finished in August last year. It's a very nice hotel. And since the management team, the hotel's management team, which we use outside management company to help us manage the hotel, their main goal has been to bring group sales, to bring sports teams, and just to make sure the rooms are rented, and also making sure that the daily rate that that they're being charged is increased to justify all the nice amenities that hotel has to offer now after the remodel. So the revenues for the budget are projected to increase by 4.5%. There are some increases in expenses as well, especially utilities and insurance. EBITDA, which is revenues after the expenses, is projected to be around $200,000 up compared to prior fiscal year. This is before any expenditures for reserves, which would be any repairs that may be needed in the hotel. Any questions?
We will have a complete model of this. Our financial consultant, Tim Oswald, is working on a model to project out with our asset managers the total increase that we can expect and what the reserves should be.
Good question. You know what's looked at to try to get that estimate of what the projected income is for the hotel? What gets looked at for that projected?
What is looked at?
Yeah.
The asset manager uses both national and local statistics to figure those numbers out. They have, I think it was 5 different companies that do analysis on the revenues, and that's what they are using.
Okay. Do you keep track of that then?
Yep.
To see
So looking at the bottom line for revenue, it went from 23 million actual in 24 to 36 million in 25. And then this year it's only budgeted for 16, next year 17.
Yeah, that would have been, because that has the project of the renovation included in that.
So that 36.
That's not revenue.
Well, that shows the money incoming. So we're on a cash basis, so what it shows, when we refinanced the model was financed initially with just a temporary loan that had to be refinanced at the end of the remodel. So what happens at the end, the funds, we do receive the funds, and that's what shows at the bottom. That's why such a huge increase compared to the prior year and the following year.
Okay.
That particular refinance,
So
had to do about.
taking that away,
Yeah.
revenue growing.
Yes.
And how much? And how do we figure that out from this report?
We'll give you a separate report that shows exactly those numbers, and that will be in that model, which will be done by the first part of February.
does this have revenue from that, the mall general fund?
Yes.
Is that in this, is that in the hotel budget specifically, or is that somewhere else? $1 million we can,
The transfer in exactly.
It's part of this budget.
it's part of this budget. What line item is that?
The transfers in would be, so it would be first page of that particular budget, and it would be account 59720. And there's a transaction detail provided for that particular amount. It's $2.4 million, but it's the training, and you can see the breakdown. And the transfer from the general fund for this budget is 1.2 million.
I see.
The rest of the budgets that have to do with the general fund, HR, finance, health services, they're very similar, so the only changes to those budgets compared to prior years would be the cost of living adjustments, benefits increases, payroll tax increases that has to do with payroll going up, and workers' comp increase, health insurance increase, things of that nature. Do you want to review CAP?
Any other questions?
What do we need to adopt the budget again, please?
By April 3rd.
But to do that, we have to,
To do that, we'll have, so March 5th is a date where that budget needs to be, the tax levy needs to be submitted to the state. It needs to be, so every city needs to submit it to the state by 4 p.m. on March 5th. Then, Johnson County will have until March 15th to mail it out to the residents. And at that point, after that date, we can schedule the public hearing for the tax levy.
so we essentially have February.
So we'll have to have that hearing for the levy, and then we'll have a separate hearing for the budget.
So our goal is to, Ann and I will continue to go through these numbers, make recommendations to the council for changes. One of the things, as I said earlier, that we're trying to anticipate is the property tax legislation and how that may affect future budgets, because there could be reasons that we would do something different in this year's budget based on our best estimate of what that legislation might be. And, the mayor is getting information, she sits on the league board, and so they are doing monitoring, our financial consultant, Tim Oswald, his company is doing the work for the League of Cities on modeling all the different legislations and how it impacts budgets. So that's good for us because they have all of our information in detail and can tell us how different pieces of legislation will be impacted. This year, they ran the model for us before we got the county information, and I think they were 0.4%.
They were very close, so they projected an increase of 4.6% to the property values, and that being 4.7. So it's very, I would say, precise.
Yeah, so their model is very accurate for our information, and that was very helpful to be able to see how close their model would be to what turned out to be actual. So now we know that they've got it dialed in very, very well. And so each of the different pieces of legislation, they can give us what the impact on Coralville specifically would be. based on what each proposal is. And right now, I think we only got 2 of the 3, right, Mayor? We still haven't got the House Republican.
I thought they did it right away, early. Okay, I don't know.
It was,
I mean,
that was
we
the
have
Senate one, I believe, Senate, the governors, and the
Senate.
House.
And,
So,
Do we have an idea when?
no,
they'll,
and we don't know when the discussion will be on which option. And, I mean, what's really concerning, so we went through the numbers, and if we were only allowed 2% increase, and you couldn't increase the benefits or the property insurance levies, which we are able to do in this current budget, we would be well over $800,000 in addition that would need to be cut. So, I mean, there's just not that much projects or items that we can do that wouldn't impact staff. And so that's kind of what is really concerning about some of those proposals.
They had a big story on the news about the governor from health tax decrease this morning. She's pushing hard.
yeah, they're working on it, and I did see it comparing of the 2 that have been out. But, I mean, bottom line is they're trying to lower property taxes, so that will affect us.
So in other words, it's going to be tighter this year than last year.
That legislation, just to be clear, will not affect
This
fiscal year 27 budget.
That's what I anticipate, and it's very hard to anticipate future years.
Thank you all. Yes. Yes, we have more to cover, I think, for the council, but you're welcome to stay, but you don't have to, you're welcome to leave. Thank you for your time and energies, and we're just so proud and Coralville. Hello. Kelly, would you like to start, or just give it right to Sherri? Okay.
All right, okay. I am going to give an update on where we're at in the process of the Coralville Community Recreation Center and Natatorium project, as well as the overall big park project, which wraps together with that. So we're about 60% complete with our schematic design process. Drawings should be ready by the middle of February, and they want to then hand those over to the construction manager with updated pricing back by the end of February. So we'll really see where we're at by end of February, at the beginning of March, to know, are we on track? Can we afford what we had in the master plan? After that, we go into our design documents, design development documents, and that's when we really start to see, does this building work? Where are all the HVAC chases, and where does the IT run, and how do people move in and out and around, and how do we get our all of our custodial services done, all of that kind of detail, as well as starting to get into the detail of the building itself, what kind of flooring are we using, all of those design elements. We still, Newman Munson still feels we're on track for a late or June or early July start on our grading and utility package. So we're starting to think about how do we want to celebrate a groundbreaking, and how do we want to include the public in that groundbreaking. The next public input opportunity on the plans will be, we're looking at March 10th.
with an open house ahead of the council meeting that evening. So probably something, we've had really good luck doing it right ahead of a council meeting in that 5 to 6:15, 4:45 to 6:15 timeframe, and then going right into council meeting. Other updates, the city champions team that was put together and helped pass the lost vote. I think most everyone on that committee has agreed to stay on as our project ambassadors for the project. And they will meet every other month to hear project updates, hear about fundraising, how they can liaison, how they can help us with outreach, and all of those elements with the community. It gives us 12 more voices out there saying, oh, this is what's going on, and I'm spreading that information to their neighbors and community members. Our first official project ambassadors meeting is Wednesday, January 28th. In the area of fundraising, we've landed on a campaign name, Where People Meet. We feel that wraps together what we're doing with the Coralville Rec Center and what we're trying to work into it with the civic campus plan and the renovation of SC Morrison Park. It really wraps together as well that people have been meeting and gathering in this part of Coralville for, we figured out, 59 years. So next year will be, in 2027, we'll celebrate that 60th anniversary of that 25-acre space. Staff are also working on the list of businesses, foundations, grant opportunities, and we'll start there with our fundraising outreach. And then we're also exploring ideas of individuals to approach with possible legacy building asks and how do we make those asks. We've talked with someone from the Center for Advancement who's on the, I always wonder about this number, but I believe it's $300 billion campaign that they're in the middle of at the University of Iowa. I think I have that number right. And then we've also talked with Josh Schamberger at Think Iowa City. Of course, he and Kelly spearheaded the arena fundraising. Coming up for council approval, we will have in the coming weeks a CM at risk at guaranteed maximum price recommendation, an architectural agreement with Neiman Munson, a geotech consultant contract. That's not part of Neiman Munson's contract. I am working with them to get as many of the sub-consultants pared down and pricing into that contract rather than, they like to write their contracts with a lot of consultants like an acoustician and a landscape architect and the design of the FF&E. They like to write those a lot of times with that not included, but what that leaves us with is it's really hard to keep track then of that bottom line. So we want it all included, and I've asked them to make sure they do that, and they've done a really good job. They've got some preliminary numbers. We just have a couple questions back and forth, and we'll finish that contract. We also are working on the 20E agreement, and we'll have that in front of you as well.
And tell them what the 28E is with, who it's with.
Oh, 2080 agreement. So 2080 agreement is a binding document between two public entities, the City of Coralville and the Iowa City Community School District. So we have a 2080 agreement with our current pool. They pay 30% of the operation expenses. They paid 30% of the build of that pool, and that one's written around time allowed. So they have 30% of the time in our indoor pool. We have 2080 agreements for Wickham, Van Allen, Borlaug, and the newest one is East Ridge Elementary with Clear Creek Amana. That's our first 2080 with them. So we'll have a new 2080 to go into with the new natatorium.
Has that percentage changed at all?
Is what?
Has that percentage that?
Yeah, we're looking at a little bit different strategy with this 2080 agreement. Because we have the natatorium, that's the pool, the competition natatorium, and we have the recreational and teaching natatorium, we'll be back and forth between the two of them, but not nearly at the same rate as we are at our pool now. And we're also making decisions around water volume. And it makes more sense, I think, to look at the water volume in some of those expenses, maybe not 100% of them, but trying to work out how we're doing that. So if I had to predict, I would say we're looking more around 35 to 40% in terms of that 100% of that operating cost of those two nav trains together.
But in terms of the build, let's get.
Oh, the build.
The
They
build.
are 14 million hard line, not moving off of what they will put into it. So all of our decisions are driven around that right now. On
That's more than
do
I
they want
remember.
to
So-
do they want a 7-foot to a 12-foot pool, or can they really afford a 4-foot to a 7-foot, or a 7-foot 4-foot to a 12-foot pool? You know, those are the kinds of decisions that we're talking about right now in their built out of their design. And we've really been focusing hard on getting that part of it done, so we get that 2080 done.
They have dedicated a lot of staff time to participating in the planning, so which is a very, very good thing. It had both the boys and girls coaches, and both the Liberty and West athletic directors, and then somebody from administration. Not always the assistant superintendent, but either he or one other. So they have really dedicated their time to making sure that it's done the best that it possibly can be for their use, but also for the dollars.
So, scratching my memory here a little bit, the overall build part of the project, forgetting about operational expenses, that's a couple years down the road, was around 50?
So
50,
overall
55?
construction build 48 million.
48, and they're paying
And
14.
then you'll also have costs related to construction manager at risk, Newman, the architects, those kind of costs. Total project, we're looking at 54 million is our estimate with all of those, and around 4 million is kind of our goal for the park and the civic campus renovations.
Okay.
We're looking at 40 million as our lost money, 14 million as our as the school district money, and a goal of 4 million to raise through those sponsorships and opportunities for naming rights.
So the next city council meeting on 27th, we'll discuss, CMAR, architecture, and all that. Is that at the next meeting?
Yeah, discussed tonight, just giving you kind of the rundown of recommendation, and it'll be on, that's my understanding, it'll be on the agenda on the 27th. Yeah. So moving into that, I know that this has been something that we had anticipated doing at the beginning of November, and I've moved it a little bit farther down the road, but it's really important that we get this wrapped up, otherwise we are to that critical point of almost being off our timeline. So we need to move this forward. So our committee, we had a 7-member committee, including 5 Coralville staff, our school district COO, and one of the principal architects from Newman Munson. And I got a lot of help through the process, not only reaching out to the Master Builders of Iowa, but also reaching out and working with Michael Kearns, who is the Director of Design and Construction at the University of Iowa. We worked through this process. We went through the RFQ process, we went through the RFP process, interviews and references, and the committee has recommended that we go with Russell Construction. They feel that they offer the best value for the city under the construction manager at risk with a guaranteed maximum price format. Russell Construction has constructed over $3 billion in construction management projects. Their main office is in the Quad Cities, adjacent to Illinois, and they've been doing the CM process much longer than the state of Iowa. They also have constructed $360 million worth of those specifically in sport and recreation facilities. In their materials, they cited 34 pool projects and 6 multiple pool natatoriums, including a 10-lane competition pool at Augustana College, I think they might be university now, and an 8-lane competition pool at North Scott High School. They brought forth 2 pool experts on their team and an HVAC expert on their team, and HVAC is very important to a pool environment and can really make or break a pool environment. Their references were very positive, and they references really liked both their pool experts and the results, and felt that they offered a well-rounded staff group, and we did as well. Other things that they said about references, what they were very knowledgeable, helped bring their projects in on time and on budget. The YMCA continues to use them in the Quad City area, and they also said, had references say they were very good to work with post-construction on projects. So this is, would be our recommendation.
So this recommendation came from the committee?
Yes.
After all the bid came in?
So bids is not really the term that you use. You go through this process of an RFQ, and then an RFP, and then you do interviews, and then references.
So I seen a document that showed that Myron Construction scored the highest points with the lowest price point being $165,000 less than what Russell Construction proposed at their cost. So I'm just kind of curious on how, where we figure that in is a cost saving for our constituents in the city.
Well, I think the bottom line was that you're looking at the best overall benefit and cost is what the CM risk is for. And when the references were done, that was when the decision was made, and the recommendation of the committee for Russell.
Did the committee meet with Myron as well?
Oh, yeah, they interviewed all 5.
All 5? Okay, you did mention that, right?
Did the references go into that scoring system?
No, that was post the score.
Why was it done post the scoring? It seemed to me that should have been factored into the scoring system.
Probably. Live and learn, how to do it, but that's, like, we've done these multiple times with our trail projects and with consultant selection process. And when you get to that point of the committee, usually you tell 1 or 2 people, okay, you make the reference calls. You don't have like all 7 people make reference calls. And so it's never been a part of like, hey, we made all these reference calls, let's meet again and score all these references. Would I do it differently? Sure. Because it's caused a lot of angst on this project. But, bottom line, at the end of the day, when you call the references and you put that back out to the committee, we came to a decision that we wanted to go with Russell.
I was under the understanding in the RFQ and the RFPs that there was points in that for deductions for references.
No, there was not.
We didn't have their score.
So, please educate me. Because of the mistake that we made for not including that scoring, would it make sense, or would it be possible to go back and start from the beginning again? Just to write all that again, and then make the choice.
I don't think that I would call it a mistake. I think that I would say this is the
Or
way the
oversight.
city of Coralville's done RFQs and RFPs in this manner, and this is how we've come to this end, and to made our decision. Going back to square one and redoing this all.
Time, money. all that,
Time,
of
money,
course.
you wouldn't consider any of the 5 that we interviewed, I would think would not be eligible at all, because they've already been through the process, they know all each other's numbers. it wouldn't really make sense.
So didn't Master Builder send a letter, concerned about the process of how we do this as far as in line with the state law?
Yes, they did, and I followed up with them personally, and they understood what we did, and they could not say that it was not, that we didn't follow the process within the law.
What's the price difference between the two?
The price adds $164,282. I did meet with Myron Construction after, the information came out and, explained, allowed them to give me more references and to call those references. Was very clear that the pool was the area, the pool information, pool references, going back and reviewing all of our notes on the interviews about the pools. They did not give me any pool references after I met with them. So we really are concerned that if that, if we don't take Russell and we do a different, then is that an area that we may need to hire outside consultants, outside independent study and outside independent oversight, which could very easily cost more than $165,000.
I mean, it could, but that's also speculation.
It is, but as the most important part of this construction of this building, it would be, I would be negligent if I didn't bring that up and say, you absolutely have to get this pool right, and here's how I think we should do it.
I'm actually surprised they didn't send anything back, because I personally know of at least 3 projects they've done at the University of Iowa that involve pools. So I'm surprised that didn't come back. I know that they did the hydraulics lab here in Coralville. They had large pools in it to test waves. They also did a pool at
Boathouse, wasn't it?
yeah, the boathouse on the river there
Yeah.
for practice, for boat practice during winter time. There's another project I'm forgetting about. So I know that they've done those type of projects here in Coralville, Iowa City. So it's kind of I'm surprised that didn't come back. And that Mike Kearns would have talked about those projects as well.
Mike did not, didn't provide reference.
Was that not the kind of pool you want? I mean, that's a different kind of company.
They're very different kinds of pools. I've been in both of those facilities and they're not competition pools.
Of course.
And even the types of equipment that you would use for that would be completely different.
Right. Right.
I think it's more down to the process. If we talk about the process that we follow, and I have to ask this question, I think, time and again, when there is, again, bid is not the correct word to use, but when it presents to council, to rate from, 1 to 5, all of the company that will be doing the work for the city. And I've asked, how do we pick, the company that we work with? And it's always come down to the ranking and the cheapest option, right? So if we follow in that process, just for the general public to understand, then
That would not be the CM at risk that we've done. That would be a typical bid process where you do take the low responsible bid. So there's the interviews, you don't do any of that type of items. We've only done CM at risk with the arena and with the originally with Mortensen, we did that for the hotel. only two. Anything else would be a traditional bid process, where it would be the low responsible bid, which is cost.
So this would be a completely different process?
Yes, it would be.
Thank you for explaining.
Yep.
Are there minutes from the meeting where the vote was taken by the committee?
We didn't take minutes.
In the minutes, we have all of the information from scoring and all of that type of information.
The vote was unanimous,
Yes.
and it was recorded as such.
And right.
Apparently, we don't have minutes, so I guess it's not recorded.
We have the published, we did all the scorings from the RFQ, the RFP interview. So you come out of that with a score, and then there's a pricing, formula that was used, and then that kind of flipped things around in the scoring, and then went to references.
What was the situation before the references? Just out of curiosity.
So coming out of the interview scoring, the highest company was Mortensen. Coming out of the pricing scoring, then it became Myron, and Russell was number 2. And then after references, we flipped Myron and Russell.
So Mortensen totally dropped off after the price?
Mortensen's pricing structure was, yes, they went from, I think they went from 1 to 3.
So we actually have a document where
Yes.
Russell's number 1 based on the revised scoring, because that's not what I saw.
We have a document that shows the scoring through interviews, the scoring through pricing, and then this is the reference notes and our recommendation.
And have we seen that? Are we allowed to get?
Yeah, you can see it. I can
That would
send
be
it to
helpful,
you.
thank you.
Would that
References and
Could
carry
it be part of,
the next meeting?
could it be part of the agenda packet for the next meeting?
Yeah, that would be, yeah. I think,
I think one of the only concerns I would have about references, as long as the references pertain to Myron of Eastern Iowa, not Myron of Wisconsin. Because they're two different offices, two different crews.
We have to look at the overall company, Royce. We can't look at just one division, because it's the ultimate company that's going to be responsible for what happens. And that's a huge issue. We had that with the original pool project, that we had errors, but the city had to end up eating costs because companies wouldn't stand behind their decisions.
Which would cost